Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me for another installment of the Wayne Public Library Virtual Jazz Series. And today I have the great honor to have a chat with the jazz pianist Larry Fuller. So, welcome.
Thank you. My pleasure.
I've had the great opportunity to see you perform three times in, I believe, about the last year. And our paths crossed here in New Jersey. And I'm such a big fan of your playing, and I'm really excited that you'll be playing as part of the uh, Wayne Public Library and Jazz Series concert on September 15th, which is a Sunday. So at the end of this interview, we'll have that information, and then for the recording, it'll also be on our YouTube page to access. So let's start with your early years. I understand you began playing at 11 piano. I find it amazing that by your mid-teens, you're already playing paying gigs. How did that come about?
Yeah, well, I had this mentor. I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, and I had this teacher. He was a saxophonist named Floyd Candy Johnson, and he had played with Bill Doggett and some great bands. He played with I think he played had some stints with the Ellington band, and he was a tremendous tenor saxophone player, and he had a program in the public schools uh, where I'm from, and he would select kids from different schools in the district, and then he compiled this uh, group of young kids, and he called it the Toledo All Star Jazz Ensemble. So it was kids from schools throughout the district that he picked, and then he just started mentoring me and coming over to my house and spending time one on one with me. And then eventually, when I was about 14, I think I did my first gig with him. He would take me out on gigs at the local I think my first professional gig was a New Year's Eve gig somewhere in Toledo that he had. But just playing local gigs and country clubs and outdoor concerts and all those kind of things. So, yeah, that's how I made my transition into I guess, early ventures into being a professional musician.
It's amazing that truly within 3 years you were playing paying gigs. I have a thought here is if Candy Johnson was a saxophonist, did you also have a piano instructor?
Oh yeah, I did. I had some not no nobody that you would you know probably know, but some Toledo was a pretty fertile um, you know community musically. There was some great a lot of great pianists, and it was close proximity to Detroit, Michigan. So that there's just a whole history of great musicians from that part of the country. But yeah, I took private lessons with some local pianists when I was growing up.
Was there any other instrument that you toyed with playing, or was it always piano?
No, I very briefly tried to my attempted playing the trumpet actually before the piano, but I just didn't take to it. And then I think maybe within the next year, I started studying the piano, and I that was my I really fell in love with the instrument and made a connection to it
Did you
more
grow
than
up in did you grow up in a household that had a lot of musical influences? Did you listen to a lot of music as a family? Were you exposed to jazz at home? Like any of that happen?
yeah, not really. I came from a very blue collar background. My father worked in the glass factory in Toledo, which at the time Toledo was the glass manufacturing capital of the United States. They made all the glass for the cars up in Detroit and fiberglass products, and so that there was like 3 or 4 glass factories in Toledo, and my father worked in one of them. So I came from a very blue collar background, and um, actually, we didn't really have any jazz in the house in terms of recordings to speak of. But it's interesting speaking with you about this because of you know you being a librarian, and um, my first access to jazz and exposure in the way of recordings was actually through the Toledo Public Library. Because this is obviously, given my age, I grew up before the whole scene with the internet and all the world we live in now, where all this stuff is so instantly available. But actually, at that time, the public libraries, like the public library in Toledo had a huge collection of jazz, and of course, you could go there and listen to it on turntables right in the library with headphones, and then check those recordings out. So I would take all the vinyl home and make cassettes of it. And but yeah, that was my first uh entry into jazz, recorded jazz. I kind of accessed it through the public library.
See, it's all come full circle. You accessed it initially in the public library. Now you'll be playing with us.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's great. There's quite a few music series at libraries. They're really a wonderful venue to present music.
And we're very grateful that you are. So now let's move on a little further. Was one of your first paying gigs with Ernestine Anderson?
No, I had been playing quite a long time by then. I was I played with Ernestine, I believe, in 1988 in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is close to Toledo, where I grew up. And there was a great club there called the Bird of Paradise, and she came through and played with a local rhythm section, which I was the piano player in the group. Um, and so I my musical influences were, it seemed, that were all the piano players she had been recording with, like Gene Harris and Monty Alexander and Hank Jones and people like that. So when I got the opportunity to work with her, I had really, I knew a lot of these recordings, and my playing was influenced by the pianist she had been recording with. So yeah, she um, asked me after that weekend in Ann Arbor if I would like to permanently, accompany her and travel with her. So I ended up moving to Seattle, Washington in 1989, where she lived, and that was my first, I guess, big gig of touring and playing all the big venues. Uh, um, and I would often travel with her, just the two of us, and then we would use a bassist and drummers from whatever town we were in, but they were always the best of the best, and so, like, if we'd play, in New York, she would have somebody great drummers like Frank Gann or Lewis Hayes. And when we played in Los Angeles, I Jeff Hamilton played, and that's he's the great drummer that played with Ray Brown for so many years. And I that was my first opportunity to play with Jeff, and then eventually that led to me joining his trio when he formed his own trio in 1994. So yeah.
Do you see a lot of serendipity in your career that by being with Ernestine Anderson that then introduced you to um, then Jeff Hamilton and who and
Definitely.
eventually getting to Ray Brown's band too. It seems like those connections really are very special.
Yeah, they are, you know. I talk to students about that sometimes in master classes when, you know, you talk about the pathway of your career and yeah, it definitely was it seemed like uh every gig uh is an opportunity that ends up leading to the next thing. But I think the key is to be prepared as possible when you have those opportunities, you know. So
Now, when you were with Ernestine Anderson, you were her accompanist and also her musical director. What does that entail to be a musical director?
well, with Ernestine actually just coming up with some arrangement ideas for the trio and really just kind of, you know, basically conducting and leading the trio, giving all the cues for the intros and endings and whatnot. You know, I mean, I didn't do any arranging for her, um, you know, for recordings or anything like that. But yeah, it was just basically just you know, uh, directing the group when we would perform and coming up with some arrangements for the trio.
So that was one of my questions is how do you coordinate when you're playing with different local bassists and drummers to know how do you convey your preference of where you want the emphasis to be in a tune and your intro and your outro?
Um, well, I mean, I definitely have some, you know, um, arranged music that I like to present. So I will, you know, try to get music to people beforehand so we can present some music that's you know, polished. And one of the things I learned from Ray Brown was he told me, he said, I hate raggedy music, you know. And what he meant was like a lot of times, I think we happen to be sitting somewhere listening to a jam session or something. Maybe we were on a festival somewhere. But anyway, I remember him saying that. And what he meant was a lot of times in jazz, you know, there's great musicians that are on the bandstand, but it's sometimes when it's just a jam session setting, you know, there's not, the music is not presented in a way that is you know, organized or arranged. And not that you want everything to be highly or overly arranged, but it is nice to present music in a way that you know, Ray always used to also say, if you're going to play somebody else's music, you know, like put a nuance on it, meaning do something to make the song your own, you know. But I learned that from playing with Ray. Everything, and Jeff Hamilton's trio as well. You know, I like to hear music that is presented in that way. And it's also nice to play things that sometimes are just a spontaneous interpretation of something. You know, because. But I think it's good to have a good combination of both. Sometimes when you go hear a group and it's not people that play together, it's just kind of a similar formula, you know, of playing the melody and then taking solos and trading fours or eight bars sections with the drummer. And that, you know, becomes like a routine that can be get old kind of fast sometimes. So yeah, I do try to send you know, some of the my arrangements and material beforehand. And that's what the nice thing of playing with some of the same musicians is that, you know, they know your material and you can do a nice presentation of the music that way.
One of the things that I have mentioned in other interviews is I love the alchemy that goes on between musicians. I'm a big fan of trio, especially. And when you see a bassist, a drummer, and a pianist have that tacit communication, and they're connecting, and you're having fun. You can tell that you guys are having fun, and it comes right to the audience, and then the audience gives it right back to you, and like there's a real like frisson in the room, and it's so exciting. And I saw that when you played in uh, the Cunningham piano store in South Jersey, and also at the Metuchen um, Jazz earlier this year. It's just exciting to see, and as an audience member, you can feel it when it happens, and you can also feel it when it doesn't happen. But I always feel it when you're playing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I like to present. I like to, you know, we like to have fun when we play. I think, you know, under the umbrella title of jazz, there's just so many incredible musicians playing such a vast array of different styles of music that somehow all get, placed under this umbrella title of jazz. But and a lot of it is really great music, but it's really academic and cerebral sometimes. And I just like to play music that's hopefully swinging and definitely not. I think you can play really high level music, but still have it be accessible and a joyful experience, you know, for the audience. That's
Also,
why we play music, really, to connect with people, not to impress other musicians. That's what I try to do anyway.
you also play some very poignant songs. I listen actually quite regularly to your self-titled album, Larry Fuller, and on there, your version of Both Sides Now is just it's hauntingly beautiful. It just like cuts right to my soul, and I also appreciate your combination of Reflections in D and Prelude to a Kiss. It's a beautiful medley that you put together, and you're bringing forth classical influences. You're bringing forth just something that's ballad, more of a ballad. But again, then there's also a lot of fun to it. But I love those arrangements. They're absolutely beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and again, that just goes back to I guess, a concept that was just I inherently um, learned, uh, by playing with some of the trios that I played with, if well, namely Jeff Hamilton and Ray Brown's trio. Um, but just that again, like Ray's concept of presenting music, and it's just at that's the beauty about a trio too. At one moment, it can be like almost like a miniature big band, or then it can be just the most lush, soft, beautiful ballad that you can present. So I like trying to touch on all those different moods and um yeah, the variety of everything that you can do with a trio, you know, and dynamics and all that.
Is your preference a trio, or have you ever performed well, a trio that's with bass and drums? But have you ever performed where it's drums and guitar, like Oscar Peterson and Herb Ellis?
uh, you mean like piano, bass, and guitar? Yeah.
Sorry. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I actually love that format too. It can be so if you have three guys that have a real similar concept of time and swinging, oh man, you can really, I mean, that's a really a great instrumentation, the piano, bass, and guitar. I love that format. I don't really get to do that too much, but I certainly have, with some really great younger guitarists. I seems like I've done that. I've played in that format with like the great guitarist on the West Coast, Graham Decter, and also played a few times with this young Finnish guitarist, Ali Soikali. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's a tremendous player. We played a gig with I played a gig with him and Martin Wynn that was really fun, So yeah, and then there's all the classic um recordings like, with Oscar Peterson's trio with Herb Ellis and Ray Brown. And also Ray had a trio later with Monty Alexander and Herb Ellis. That was great, that they called that triple treat. That was a great group. I love that. I love that sound.
The the pianists who you have been likened to, of course, are Oscar Peterson, Gene Harris, who you mentioned, Monty Alexander, and I'm a big fan of all of those. But as soon as I heard you play one song, I downloaded all your albums, and they are just fantastic. You are really something special, and it's exciting to hear because you have your own style, but you hear those influences from those gentlemen. Can you pinpoint what influenced you from them?
Yeah, I think the common thread is honestly the blues, because when you think about, I guess, growing up in Toledo, that area of the Midwest, Ray Brown, he's from Pittsburgh, not too far away, and he said if you're from Pittsburgh, you had to be able to play the blues. I think certain areas of the country have a certain components in the music that are like kind of indigenous to that area, But there was where I grew up and when I grew up, almost there were so many musicians that, including my mentor, Candy Johnson, was a tremendous, like, well, he was from Kansas City originally, but he definitely had that almost Texas tenor, like blues sound. And all through my career, I've well, I've been influenced from an early age by those pianists. I mean, who could play the blues like Gene Harris? Nobody. Or Ray Brown too. I mean, and so and Monty and Oscar and all those players that I love um, really had that as a part of their concept and their sound. And then now, I still get to play with people like Houston Person, who's he speak of the blues, and I think Houston's name should be under the definition of the blues, maybe in the in the encyclopedia in the dictionary. But yeah, I love those play all the players that are have that as a part of their sound and concept.
I had the great pleasure of seeing you perform with Houston Person at Jazz Forum, and that was really special. He's incredible, as are you with the
He
big.
is. Oh, thanks. The other night I mentioned before we started recording, we were talking about the amount of rain we've been having, but 2 nights ago, I mentioned I played out in Stony Brook, Long Island, which is quite a hike from where I live in New Jersey. But anyway, speaking of Houston, um, uh, the gig was produced by Tom Manuel, who runs the Jazz Loft out in Stony Brook. But he assembled this band with Houston Person, Warren Vache, and uh, Steve Little, the drummer that played with Duke Ellington, and Bill Crow on bass. And they called it Project 450 because the collective age of the musicians was like 450 years. Yeah, amazing to see these guys playing like this at their ages. It's so amazing.
Well, Bill Crow is turning 97 this year, and God bless this man. He performed here earlier in May. Uh, with
Yeah,
Anika Schubel and Nick Schubel, which was wonderful. And I've had the chance to see him perform at other venues in Morristown and up at Croton on the
yeah,
Hudson. And he, what an incredible man. So yeah, you're right. The median age.
yeah.
But
And Steve Little and Houston, I think, are within a month of each other's age or something, or a couple months. Yeah, so amazing.
So you're the young man.
I'll take it.
Now you have influences, obviously, by pianists, as we've talked about, and it sounds like you also have then influences by non pianists like Ernestine Anderson as a vocalist, as you mentioned, Candy Johnson. Are there any other non pianists that are influences to you?
Oh yeah, just I mean, so many um players that I love, this language of jazz. I mean, I think we all, have certain players that speak to us and but I mean, yeah, I love so many and again, probably my favorites are people that have that kind of essence of the blues in their playing and that sense of you know swinging and uh, but I love so many Clark Terry, uh, Cannonball, and I mean, boy, where do you begin? But yeah, it's important to listen to all the great musicians playing and this music and not just the ones that are on your own instrument.
To go back to piano players, were you influenced by Teddy Wilson?
Yeah, not so much though. In that, I mean, I love his playing and I shouldn't say um uh you know not so much, but I mean he's such a great solo pianist. But the thing about Teddy's style is that like I could never, not that anybody could play like him anyway, but could naturally kind of capture that sound because I don't have the biggest span in my left hand. And so much of the signature of that sound is, playing those walking tenths and those big spreads in the left hand. So was not really a style that I could emulate that easily. More so, I guess, from a physical standpoint. But yeah, what a brilliant and beautiful musician, he was.
I believe his span was an over an octave, wasn't it?
Well, they would play tenths, Yeah, they would play a lot, mostly tenths in the left hand.
Wow, that's an incredible thing. So in 2005 through 2013, you were performing with John Pizzarelli, and you were a sideman in his band. I'm curious what it was like for you to, or how do you coordinate with a guitarist? So a guitarist can play chords, and the piano plays chords. So is there a coordination you have to do when you're playing in a group?
Yeah, just really just I think being sensitive and being, listening and just um it's always that kind of interplay with when you're playing with piano and guitar, but I feel like John and I were very compatible that way, And then and also the thing about John's style, he's uh you know and he obviously being the son of Bucky, and he really plays a lot of when he's not soloing on the guitar, he's playing a lot of just straight quarter note, comping, because that's kind of the style of the music that we play, but he would play more like a Freddie Green style. So that it's a yeah, that's allows the piano to more kind of comp, and because he's just setting like a real strong rhythm. But yeah, I think just listening and just the it's a bit of an intuitive process too, just having a lot of experience playing as a pianist with guitar players. But yeah, we always seem to be pretty compatible. I don't ever remember us having really discussions about that either.
Well, the level of musicianship by everyone in that band is just very high. So, as a layperson, it looks
Yeah,
like it's just all magic.
yeah.
You told a very funny story, and I'm hoping you'll repeat it at the Mendham Jazz about Ray Brown when you were performing with Ray Brown, and you traveled, and that sometimes you had to use basses that were local, and you went to a small island. Would you mind sharing that story?
Oh yeah, I think you were uh, referencing the well, I was talking about when I was in Ray's trio, we did a tour in Europe, and in the middle of the tour, we had a concert in one of these in some small village in Greece. I can't remember what the little island was and what the town was. But anyway, the aircraft servicing that island was so small that the raised base wouldn't fit on the plane going there. It was just like a little prop plane. So when we got there, you know, it was an outdoor festival, and you know, they had to try to find a base for Ray, and there was one base in this little village that uh apparently like the guy had some skills as a luthier or whatever, but I could tell when they gave the bass to Ray that it just didn't look right. The neck looked so wider than normal, and Ray grabbed the bass and he was like, oh, he says, man, I'm in trouble tonight, and because it was just not even really a legitimate instrument, I don't think so. Um, but the funny thing was is that he that night when we played, he still could get his sound out of that. Like you knew it was Ray Brown playing. I mean, and that's the thing about getting a sound on an instrument, it comes from inside you. It's really not the instrument. If you have the sound and the concept inside of you, you can project that through whatever the situation and instrument you're playing is. So, and then to kind of follow that up later on, but it was so amazing that Ray could get his sound on this like homemade bass. And then later on, when we were touring, uh, also in Europe, there was this guy that kept showing up on the gigs, and he would come back in the dressing room, and he would be talking with Ray, and obviously he was a friend of Ray's, but I didn't know who he was, and eventually I said to Ray, I said, Ray, who is that? Who is that fella? And he says, well, he said he's a bass player. He said, and every time I come over here, he comes out and follows me around. He said he's after me. He wants to buy my bass. And then Ray paused and he looked at me and he said he thinks if he gets this bass, he'll sound like me. So again,
So,
it's not the
so
instrument, of course, but
you're a Yamaha endorsed artist. So if I sat down at your Yamaha, will I sound like you? I hope.
well, hopefully better.
That would never happen because you're just remarkable. So I want to talk about when you're putting together a playlist for your shows. Is what goes into that? Is it based on the musicians you're playing with, or what songs you may have written recently or arranged? What's the process there?
Yeah, kind of all of those things actually, you know. And again, I mean, one of the nice things about working with an actual, you know, trio as opposed to just mm, uh working with musicians that, it's just like a pickup situation or whatever, is that, you can present some arranged music. And so I just try to just you know again present a variety of music, and I like to I like to be conscious of presenting different tempos and moods, and all that. So yeah, and sometimes given that I played with Ray Brown, I like to play some of tip my hat to Ray and pay a little tribute to him and play some of his uh, uh, arrangements as well. So yeah, it depends on you know uh, if it's my own trio, I have the opportunity to play more material that the guys know. So, but yeah.
Well, your breadth of knowledge and just the sheer breadth of how many songs you know based on who you play with. My sister likes to call you the walking fake book because you must truly have the knowledge of all this music in an entire fake book, right?
Well, to be honest, I mean, I appreciate you saying that, but there's certainly some musicians that's like their forte, knowing all the so I certainly think there's a lot of well, I know there's a lot of musicians that are uh you know have a bigger repertoire than I do, but yeah, that's one of the things that I think is kind of maybe dying out with the uh, younger musicians, just the whole learning the whole repertoire of Great American Songbook. I certainly don't know all of it, but speaking of like, John Pizzarelli, there's someone that knows so much of the Great American Songbook and Houston Person. It's amazing how many songs Houston knows, and he knows all the lyrics to the songs. The very important thing actually is learning the lyrics to a song, even if you're not a singer, because it informs how you play the melody. It informs what is the essence of the song, what is the song, what is the message in the lyrics, that informs how the meaning of the song and how you want to interpret it.
That's interesting. I
But
hadn't
yeah,
thought about that.
I don't know. I don't have the repertoire that a lot of musicians do, but it's constantly evolving process. There's always music to learn. And it's not just the Great American Songbook. There's the whole. There's the Cedar Walton repertoire. There's the Art Blakey Jazz Messengers repertoire, Benny Golson and repertoire, and yeah, there's so much music.
Are there any songs that you'd like to tackle that you haven't already?
Uh, wow, that's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head, but there's always just songs that come along that you just are like, wow, that's a great one. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about your compositions. I'm curious as to how you go about composing. Is it a you're listening to a style of music and you want to write a samba, or are you influenced by a person? I know one example, of course, is a wonderful song you wrote for your wife called Jane's Theme.
Yeah. Um, I guess, yeah, it seems like there's no set process. It could be any of those things. It could be having a certain uh feeling in mind, like a certain type of uh rhythmical style you want to write a tune in, a certain kind of mood you want to set. But often, the process for me is, I might just get a little piece of something, that's like a little cell of a melody or something, or a little figure, uh, or a little harmonic pattern, and then that kind of is like a little seed that germinates into uh, another section, and then all of a sudden you have a formed piece. But then again, you could just say, "Oh, I'm just gonna write. I want to write something over a preconceived harmonic structure. Like you might just want to write uh, a minor blues or something like that. So it's always it's different, but sometimes you just find a little nugget of something, and then that's like a little statement that's germinates into something more. And then yeah, it's a bit of an enigma, I guess. I I don't have a certain process, you know.
Well, the creative process is different for everyone. Are you drawn
Right.
to certain time signatures, or do you like to explore unconventional time signatures?
Not so much. I'm really old school, I grew up swinging and playing, playing playing the blues, and I appreciate everybody that can play all that complicated music, but it's not really what I do.
You spoke about teaching in a master class. What are some of the other things you like to convey to students or that are building their own careers?
First of all, I really didn't come through an academic setting, so I'm not really uh, uh, an educator or a clinician in the traditional sense of maybe what other people bring to an academic uh, situation, but I just try to talk about my own path in the music and what worked for me, which was uh, the basics of the obvious things of just studying and learning as much as you can, learning as much, many tunes as you can and whatnot. But then for me, it was my path was um, kind of unfolded by my influences. Um, like I mentioned earlier, I had all these pianists that I was influenced by, and because of that influence, I worked with an artist who had a connection to these musicians that my playing was informed by. So I had that connection, and I tell musicians, students too, if you uh, think about who you want to play with, and then set that as a goal, and uh, it can be a methodical process to achieve that goal of who you want to work with. If you learn an artist all their music and really study all their records and if you have an opportunity to play with that artist, that they're going to remember you because you learned all their music. And when you're a band leader and somebody knows all your music, that's who you're gonna call. So I just talk about those kind of basic things with but then again, all the things you have to navigate through now as a musician to uh um uh you know be active in the current scene. It's so much of it is social media, and I think the students are probably more well informed with a lot of that than some of the older veteran musicians. So we can, in a sense, kind of learn from each other in terms of that. But yeah, I think setting a path uh, of who you want to play with, and just trying to learn material of that artist, and you know when the opportunity comes, if you're prepared, then that's the name of the game, I think.
It's I'm curious if the pandemic had a great impact on your performing, and or did you find yourself doing more composition? Was some musicians found it to be a blessing in disguise, and of course there are a lot of challenges and struggles.
Yeah, yeah, there was definitely a lot of challenges and struggles. I just I didn't devote my that time period so much to composition, just really practicing and trying to explore some uh, areas of my playing that you know I was interested in developing, and um, yeah, it's a definite like transition, I think, period for a lot of musicians. It seems like the whole essence of social media in music too became just so much more pervasive because that was the only, I guess, access to that we had during that time, and so yeah.
So to put the question that you put to your these students, if you will, is who would you like to play with next that you haven't played
Oh,
with?
myself?
Yes.
Oh, geez, I don't know. That's a good question, but I have to say, I really feel fortunate that I've gotten to play with a lot of the players that I love. Uh, yeah, there's some players out there. There's so many great players, that I'm sure it would be a thrill to play with, but I don't know that I have a goal necessarily to play with anyone that I haven't. Uh, It was a real thrill for me. My big goal was to get to play with a lot of the players that I guess I was fortunate in that I did. Namely, playing with Ray Brown, just listening to him as a kid, and geez, I mean, when your heroes are Oscar Peterson and players like that, and Ray Brown was on all those recordings. So, and then I got to hear his trios, before I had the opportunity to play with him. So, yeah, that was one of the big thrills for me to be in that group.
Well, I think then you need to keep your telephone line open for these young ones who
Yeah.
have you on their trajectory as a goal
You
to
know what's funny? I was just sorry, but I was just thinking that as you said that, it would probably be younger musicians that I would like to play with at this point, because there's so many great ones that, um, you know, the I'll be 60 years old next year, so I guess I'm getting to be one of the old timers. So yeah, I'd probably like to play with some of these younger guys there's so many phenomenal musicians, it's amazing. And then the whole advent of jazz education and just all these programs and all the instant access to so much information that young musicians have now, it's extraordinary, like the level that the young musicians are playing at such a young age. Yeah.
from the man who started his career at 11 and then was getting paid gigs at 14. So
Well,
I think you win as far as young.
yeah, but the level of playing that the kids are playing at though is extraordinary now. But thank you for saying that.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time today to chat with me here, and I look forward to hearing you perform next month on
My pleasure.
15th. We're going to have a great time with that, and that'll be recorded and also available on the library's YouTube page. For those of you who are local, we have two of Larry's CDs in the library collection. We have his self-titled CD, Larry Fuller, and then his from 2014, and the other CD, Overjoyed, from 2019. But if you don't have a CD player, download them because they're absolutely fantastic.
Thank
So
you so much.
So thank you, and I really look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you.